You're watching Network Radio. Live from the Media Broadcasting Center.
The following program is closed captioned for the thinking impaired.
And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence.
It was 1776 when the founders signed the writ of independence from the Brits. It was revolution. Now an enemy from within would enslave us all again and deprive us of our rights in the Constitution. Restore the Republic. Wake up, it's time to understand. Restore the Republic. We're losing our freedom in the land. Working from behind the scenes, controlling everything, from the daily news we read to the politicians. And they're pulling our financial strings, more powerful than kings. It's a central bank elites bringing our destruction.
This is the Restore the Republic show with your talk show host, Kevin Blake.
Well, good evening. Or good night. Well, time will only tell. But welcome to the Restore the Republic show here on Media. I am your host, Kevin Blake, broadcasting to you live and loud from the beautiful, dark countryside of Valdosta, Georgia. Today is May the 12th, 2015, the year of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. The number to get in is, get your pens out, 866-806-6264. Again, that number is 866-806-6264. And when prompted, you will have to enter this code 2 times, 148-048-9614. 148-048-9614. Well, we have a great show planned this evening, so sit back and listen along as we go over the latest and greatest information that is guaranteed to comfort the disturbed and will disturb the comfortable. Few housekeeping notes. We need your help, folks. Media Broadcasting Center is a listener-supported media operation. You will not watch shows like this on Fox News or CNN. Either way, you can support shows like this and others here on the network by going to MediaBroadcastingCenter.com and becoming a subscriber. It literally costs 13 cents a day. So subscribe today and please support this show and others here on the network. Also, my veteran brothers over there at the USS Liberty Veterans Association are looking for a few good men. You can get online, usslibertyveterans.org, check out their store, check out their information, start to learn what really happened there on June 8th, 1967, and understand what that crew went through. And definitely become a voice in supporting these men in their fight. They're really gaining some traction right now, so they definitely need your help. Also, my special NFA attorney there in Mississippi, Stephen Stambuli, is engaged in not one, but two NFA lawsuits trying to, get rid of that rash, Eric Holder. And also, he's trying to get our machine guns back. So that's a win-win. But get in touch with him and find out what you can do to help, because him and his crack staff of lawyers over there are doing a lot of this stuff out of their own pockets, and they need patriots like us to get in touch with them and help them out, at least whatever we can do to help them out. SDSlaw.us. That's Sierra Delta Sierra Law.us. Or give them a call at 601-852-3440. Before I get into my guest for the night, if you're watching this show, Eric Shepard, I want you on my broadcast. I'm not gonna attack you. I'm not gonna, be mean to you, anything like that. I want you on this broadcast. I want you on this program, whether you want to call in or if you want to maintain elusive, or be elusive, that's fine. I understand that. I just want to hear your side in everything that occurred at VSU. So a lot of people are really coming down on me for trying to do this, but as a journalist, I want to get your side of everything. And you can even video in if you're not comfortable using a phone. But I've been in touch with your people, and your people know how to get in touch with me. So let that be enough said, and we'll have more. But I'm reaching out to you because I want your side. Anyways, quote, "And how we burn in the camps later thinking, what would things have been like if every security operative, when he went out at night to make an arrest, had been uncertain whether he would return alive and had not say goodbye to his family? Or if during periods of mass arrest, for example in Leningrad, when they arrested a quarter in the entire city, people had not simply sat in their lairs paling with terror at every bang of the downstairs door and at every step on the staircase, but had understood they had nothing left to lose and boldly set up in the downstairs hall an ambush of a half a dozen people with axes, hammers, pokers, or whatever else was at hand. The organs would have quickly have suffered a shortage of officers in transport, and notwithstanding all of Stalin's thirst, the cursed machine would have ground to a halt. If, and this is the key to my listening audience, if we didn't love freedom enough, and even more, we had no awareness of the real situation, we purely and simply deserved everything that happened afterwards." Unquote. That's Alexander Solzhenitsyn from his book, The Gulag Archipelago. So enough with the housekeeping notes. I bring up that quote tonight because my special guest is going to come on, and we're going to talk about some of this information pertaining to Jade Helm and a lot of the other news that isn't around the country. In very short notice, I've asked my guest tonight to come on, and he is busy himself with his own ministry and blog. Mark, do we have our guest on yet? Well, my guest tonight is Dave Hodges with the Common Sense Show. Do I have Dave Hodges on the line? No, we don't. Okay, well, we will run to a quick commercial break, and I'm hearing other people trying to get in. So we're going to go ahead and probably run to a quick commercial break, and we will be right back on Media Broadcasting Center. You're watching the Restore the Republic show. Don't touch that mouse and go nowhere. Stay tuned for more.
On June 8, 1967, during the Six-Day War, the USS Liberty, a naval technical research ship in international waters, was attacked by Israeli air and naval forces, Israel fully knowing this was an ally ship. The combined attacks killed 34 and wounded 171 men. Following the event began the largest cover-up in history. We are the USS Liberty Veterans Association, and we are looking for a few good men. Please join us in our fight by demanding a congressional investigation of the attack. Find out more by visiting us at usslibertyveterans.org today. And remember, you can handle the truth.
We can now say, with moral certainty and considerable scientific authority, that the death of JFK was committed by a meticulously executed conspiracy which was obscured by an extensive cover-up. Murder in Dealey Plaza, edited by James Fetzer, goes to the heart of the JFK assassination. You'll read new and up-to-date information regarding the Secret Service, the Lincoln limousine, the medical evidence, the cover-up, altering the film, framing the patsy, and the silent historians. Also, 16 smoking guns, each one crushing the government's lone assassin scenario. A world-class chronology of November 22nd, 1963. Chapters by David W. Mantic, Gary Aguilar, Vincent Palomera, Douglas Weldon, Jack White, Ira David Wood III, James H. Fetzer, Doug Horn, and a classic essay by Bertrand Russell. The complete story in the pages of one single book, edited by James H. Fetzer. Read it now. Read it again. You'll use it as a reference. Murder in Dealey Plaza. Available at Amazon.com and major bookstores around the world. It's murder.
Are you tired of the direction America's headed? Do you feel like your representatives are not representing you? Do you want to get things back to normal and just don't know where to start? Well, we know how you feel. We are the People's Awareness Coalition. Join the discussion online at pacalliance.us to find out the latest information that will bring solutions to our problems. While you are there, be sure to get your copy of the book, The Red Amendment by L.B. Bork. You have questions, we have answers. The People's Awareness Coalition.
A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, shall not be infringed. The Second Amendment of the Bill of Rights.
Run it again.
On June 8,
Run a short one.
1967, during the Six-Day War, the USS Liberty, a naval technical research ship in international waters, was attacked by Israeli air and naval forces, Israel fully knowing this was an ally ship. The combined attacks killed 34 and wounded 171 men. Following the event began the largest cover-up in history. We are the USS Liberty Veterans Association, and we are looking for a few good men. Please join us in our fight by demanding a congressional investigation of the attack. Find out more by visiting us at usslibertyveterans.org today. And remember, you can handle the truth.
We can now say, with moral certainty and considerable scientific authority, that the death of JFK was committed by a meticulously executed conspiracy which was obscured by an extensive cover-up. Murder in Dealey Plaza, edited by James Fetzer, goes to the heart of the JFK assassination. You'll read new and up-to-date information regarding the Secret Service, the Lincoln limousine, the medical evidence, the cover-up, altering the film, framing the patsy, and the silent historians. Also, 16 smoking guns, each one crushing the government's lone assassin scenario. A world-class chronology of November 22nd, 1963. Chapters by David W. Mantic, Gary Aguilar, Vincent Palomero, Douglas Weldon, Jack White, Ira David Wood III, James H. Fetzer, Doug Horn, and a classic essay by Bertrand Russell. The complete story in the pages of one single book, edited by James H. Fetzer. Read it now. Read it again. You'll use it as a reference. Murder in Dealey Plaza. Available at Amazon.com and major bookstores around the world. It's murder.
Are you tired of the direction America's headed? Do you feel like your representatives are not representing you? Do you want to get things back to normal and just don't know where to start? Well, we know how you feel. We are the People's Awareness Coalition. Join the discussion online at pacalliance.us to find out the latest information that will bring solutions to our problems. While you are there, be sure to get your copy of the book, The Red Amendment by L.B. Bork. You have questions, we have answers. The People's Awareness Coalition.
A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, shall not be infringed. The Second Amendment of the Bill of Rights.
So let's do it. I'll spoil some bumper. All right, welcome back to the Restore the Republic show. Sorry for the long-winded commercial segment. We were trying to connect up with our guests, and with some success, we actually have them on the line. So our guest for the show this evening is, of course, Dave Hodges with The Common Sense Show. You can check him out on his website at thecommonsenseshow.com. I think kind of just with as busy as you and I have been, Dave, that we didn't really get a chance to do a formal bio. if you would like to give a little bio about yourself, kind of explain a little past and where you got to today.
Well, I came to this party a little bit late in life. I'm a retired college basketball coach, and I still, teach part-time here and there. And the rest of the time, I fight bad guys like this in this venue. And so I got into this because John McCain and his friends of New World Order extraction tried to steal my property and that of my neighbors, 300 neighbors. Out here in rural Arizona, we live about 25 miles north of Phoenix. They wanted our land because we sit on the state's largest water aquifer, and they wanted to put a highway through our land for an international corridor under the Central American Free Trade Agreement. And as I was fighting against John McCain's forces, I found out just how bad things really are. So the rest, as they say, is history, and that's how I came to get involved in what I do now.
Fair enough. And you do actually an absolute amazing job. Folks, if anybody doesn't know Dave Hodges, I know a couple of listeners down here in Valdosta, if you've definitely come up in conversation before, and the amazing pieces of absolute truth and some of the best news articles I've read, of course, come from your blog site, The Common Sense Show, and they are action-packed, truth-packed, and folks, definitely get over there and start reading because there's a lot to learn in this fight.
Well, there's a lot to fight. We're in a great deal of trouble, and right now the bad guys are winning.
Yes, they are, and that's mainly why I brought you on my program tonight. Of course, we got Steve Quayle coming up on Thursday, but I wanted you kind of as a predecessor to Steve Quayle to bring the listening audience up on Jade, Helm, Trans-Pacific Partnership, ISIS. I mean, all the things that we're seeing, and I spent the last probably 2 or 3 hours reading through a lot of stuff that I had missed on your site because unfortunately I had to cover other issues down here in my area, but the floor is yours, sir.
Well, it's really hard to know what Jade Helm is exactly because the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know. Jade Helm is easily the largest military preparation drill in the history of this country, probably the history of the planet. And it's primarily designed to do two things on its surface. One is to extract potential political dissidents, and the second thing is to enforce martial law. So those are the two main functions of Jade Helm. They employ special forces for the political dissident extractions, and they use regular military like the 82nd Airborne for the martial law aspect of things. But Jade Helm is so complicated, and there's been so much deception on the part of the federal government about what Jade Helm really is. For example, they tell us the drill isn't supposed to start until July 15th. Well, we got video of political extraction drills from Fort Lauderdale that took place on March 27th. We're also told that the drill is only in 7 states. I have video, still photos, and eyewitness accounts, and I am declaring the fact that Jade Helm is in all 50 states. I ran a count there for about a month where, okay, we're up to 16, we're up to 20, we're up to 40, but it's in all 50 states. So the government is lying through their teeth. The extraction drills are coming between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m., which is reminiscent of the Nazis and what they did with the Jews. And so, we can go anywhere you want with this, but effectively, I find that when this many lies have already been told to the American people about what Jade Helm is, it's definitely something with the federal government we should not trust. Many of us, including myself, are fearful that Jade Helm will go live, that there'll be a provocative trigger event. We've already seen what it could be, and that's ISIS incursions. And let me speak to that very quickly here. Judicial Watch, approximately a month ago, came across a double source document which placed an ISIS base camp about 8 miles from El Paso on the other side of the Mexican border. And I've talked to a Texas Ranger, I've talked to people in the military, And they all say the same thing. They're being told by their commanding officers to brace for an ISIS attack in Texas. Well, with Pam Geller had her draw a Mohammed Prophet contest in Garland, Texas, we had 2 ISIS men try to come into an area with 75 people attending the event, and they were going to gun them all down. And had it not been for a brave Dallas police officer, or I should say motorcycle cop, who took out these 2 men with headshots, we would have had quite a loss of life because they were heavily armored.
Yes.
They had automatic weapons. So I am worried about an ISIS incursion, and that might make Jade Helm go live.
Well, and particularly with ISIS, I don't know how much you've seen on this, but the whole nature of ISIS has been a funding of the U.S. government. As far as anything that I've been able to research into it, it more or less shifted from Al-Qaeda into ISIS. Have you been able to kind of confirm anything along the lines of that?
Well, but it's funny you bring that up here. Last summer, during the immigration crisis, a DEA agent reached out to me, and he actually has active protocols, and he worked with me for about 60 days. I was not allowed to know his last name, and today he reached out to me and put his last name. And I now have his home phone number. He was here in the Phoenix area where he has relatives when he contacted me. Here's what I've learned about the connections between these nefarious groups south of the border. The Judicial Watch report named the fact that ISIS was involved in with the drug cartels, namely the Sinaloas, the Juarez, and the Tijuana cartels. And what we know is that the Mexican drug cartels, and this has been part of released federal documents since 2007, they're aligned with Hamas and Hezbollah, 2 well-known terrorist groups.
Yeah.
Well, it gets worse than this, though. What we also know is the Mexican drug cartels are connected and, for the most part, controlled by a group in Peru called the Sanchez Paredes Drug Cartel. They are the largest drug cartel in the world, the largest one that anyone's ever heard of. Not many people have heard of this group, but effectively, they are controlled by the Peruvian army, who it's really curious. They've been trained by us.
Mm-hmm.
Their bank, Sonero Luminoso, controls most of the cocaine trafficking and heroin traffic on the planet. They have connections into the Middle East with Hamas and Hezbollah there, the Muslim Brotherhood, in which the president's half-brother, Malik Obama, serves as the head of finance and arms running for the Muslim Brotherhood. And the Muslim Brotherhood, Al-Qaeda, Hamas, Hezbollah are a hybrid group that has basically morphed into ISIS. And ISIS, as we know, I had a special ops officer on named Scott Bennett on my show, and Scott testified to the fact that ISIS is a CIA-funded creation. And we do know that ISIS was put together and funded, very well armed, from military hardware left behind in Iraq, which is illegal to do. It's a violation of military protocols. So those are the connections that ISIS follows to their drug cartel partners. And in the Judicial Watch document, the document made clear that what's happening is the coyotes for the drug cartels are acting as intelligence gathering agents for targets inside the United States, including universities, Sands Laboratory, White Sands Laboratory, Alamogordo. I mean, you name a sensitive installation near the border, this is what has been targeted on this document that was recovered by Judicial Watch. So we do have a major problem here. Now, it's kind of funny. When I started reporting this, outlets like NPR and KHOU-TV out of Houston were just vilifying me to no end. Yet what's interesting, in the same time frame, the director of the FBI came out and said he had open ISIS cases in all 50 states, in that they are indeed tied to the drug cartels. So he effectively validated the Judicial Watch report, for which the mainstream media attacked me no end. Now, the attacks I endured actually kind of backfired, I think, on the mainstream media. For example, the NPR, they never mentioned me by name, but what they did was they would take quotes from my articles, 3 different articles, and they would link back into my website. Well, NPR had 30,000 visitors they put on my website since that time, and I've been hearing from a lot of them. They're saying that they're being exposed to the truth now in ways that they never had before.
Yeah.
And I've gained additional readership as a result of NPR trying to discredit my work. So sometimes when they attack us, they end up helping us.
Well, and that's what we're seeing every day now, especially with the Jade Helm and all the news that comes out from the mainstream media. I like to call them these pesky little blogs. But, you know, all the stuff that comes out from these people, it ends up backfiring on them because the American people are starting to wake up. The sleeping giant's starting to awaken. And like you said, every day we're learning something new about Jade Helm. You know, they'll go to a commissioner's meeting and say one thing, and then they'll go to a city council meeting somewhere in downtown Dallas and say, oh, we didn't say that at the commissioner's meeting. So, I mean, there's a clear attempt that they are absolutely trying to cover themselves, and the lie is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and they cannot keep up with it. And to add a producer's note here, alternative media like you, Dave, like Steve Quayle, like us here on Media Broadcasting Center, InfoWars, all of us as a whole are really making a difference on this and kind of really pushing back against their plans. I mean, I don't know. That's how I see it.
It is interesting. You're right about that. I've been invited on to shows that would not have touched me a year ago. They looked at me, at least, you know, on the outside, as being too radical to interview. But I've been on Fox stations, Clear Channel stations. Even Tom Hartman's people reached out to me and wanted to interview me last Wednesday. It's just I had a commitment that I could not get out of, and they weren't interested in doing a pre-record, so I didn't go on the show. But I've been on Channel 8 out of Washington, D.C., which is all news, and it's got a real liberal bent to it. I was on a Fox station in Provo, Utah. These people are scared. I find it interesting that the mainstream media is reaching out to Dave Hodges and people like myself because they're not getting the truth from their own established media.
Yeah.
And they're coming to us to find out what's really going on with Jade Helm. These people are afraid. They're afraid of the imposition of martial law, the political extraction of dissidents. They know we're being surveilled. Most of them know that the NSA has assigned each person in America a threat matrix score, but we don't know what the threshold is in terms of who's going to be taken away and who isn't. And America is scared to death. My website for the last 2 months has set records each consecutive week, and largely Jade Helm is driving this. And I think this is backfiring in the eyes of the administration. They're having to send out lieutenant colonels now to places like Bastrop County, Texas, to go before a packed county commissioners meeting and explain to the public why they should put up with helicopters in their neighborhoods at 3 a.m. and troops repelling from them landing in people's backyards. And people are mad. And what Jade Helm has tried to do, and this was exposed very early on, Jade Helm was attempting to bribe county commissioners in Texas with $150,000 paid to the general fund of each county that they were going into. Like somehow this intimidation and nuisance would make it okay. And the people were never told about this, and the people are furious. And 3 counties in Texas have actually told Jade Helm to take a hike. The Texas governor, Governor Abbott, has said he's going to use the Texas Guard to shadow all Jade Helm activities in the state to protect constitutional liberties and private property. I know that some of the Mormon Church in Utah, and I know that from the appearances I've made in their state on radio stations, is they're up in arms about this because Texas, Utah, and parts of Southern California have been declared to be hostile areas by the Jade Helm map. What is a hostile area? See, this speaks to me that Jade Helm has a third purpose, which is civil war. And I believe that Jade Helm is preparing our troops to fight against the American people because they believe that something so bad is going to happen that there's going to be a civil war in this country. Michael Savage has said this within the last week. I know Alex Jones came out and said this a few days ago, and I wrote an article today in which I am now saying it. This federal government wants, under the Obama administration, they want a civil war. We're waking up. America's rising up against the tyranny, and they want to put us down by provoking a conflict to which they win.
Well, and the only thing that we lack in this current administration is a communist revolution. But with that, we're going to go to a quick bottom of the hour break. We will be right back with my guest, Dave Hodges. Go nowhere.
On June 8, 1967, during the Six-Day War, the USS Liberty, a naval technical research ship in international waters, was attacked by Israeli air and naval forces, Israel fully knowing this was an ally ship. The combined attacks killed 34 and wounded 171 men. Following the event began the largest cover-up in history. We are the USS Liberty Veterans Association, and we are looking for a few good men. Please join us in our fight by demanding a congressional investigation of the attack. Find out more by visiting the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the places to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. The Fourth Amendment of the Bill of Rights. Are you tired of the direction America is headed? Do you feel like your representatives are not representing you? Do you want to get things back to normal and just don't know where to start? Well, we know how you feel. We are the People's Awareness Coalition. Join the discussion online at pacalliance.us to find out the latest information that will bring solutions to our problems. While you are there, be sure to get your copy of the book, The Red Amendment by L.B. Bork. You have questions, we have answers. The People's Awareness Coalition.
A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The Second Amendment of the Bill of Rights.
Going back on.
Fires cooking, and the farming babies with slaves are working.
All right. Welcome back to the Restore the Republic show. We're going to really get into the discussion now. Just over the break, there are so many pieces to this puzzle that we're trying to put together. And we got 2 shows this week to do it all. But continuing back with our guest, Dave Hodges, welcome back. Dave, of course, he's with the commonsenseshow.com. Massive news. Well, actually, he writes his own articles over there. So, but lots of great news up there. And folks, I'm telling you, you need to get up there, check it out, and really, really read through these articles because you will find some amazing pieces up there. But continuing back here on the discussion, Dave, over the break, we were mentioning some things, going through a lot of your articles that you had, and you did mention you wanted to talk about the Navy connection and all this. And, basically, our president's been having a little bit of a problem trying to control our naval commanders on our submarines.
Well, this goes back to Benghazi. And I wrote about this 1 month after Ambassador Stevens was assassinated with the help of the Obama administration. They were in distress, as we know, Master Stevens and 4 contingent from his bodyguard. They called for help, and General Helm, who was the head of AFRICOM, said, well, I'm going to go in. And Leon Panetta said, no, you're not. And after the communication ended, Ham had conversation with Admiral Guyette of Carrier Task Force 3, the Stennis Carrier Task Force 3, and Guyette had drones in the area and was transmitting live feeds back to General Ham, and he said, we need to go in. So Guyette was going to dispatch F-16s from his carrier, and Ham was going to send in a rescue mission for Army Rangers. And within 30 seconds of countermanding Panetta's order, General Ham was arrested by his number 2 associate, who we did not know was in the CIA, Colonel Rodriguez, and Admiral Guyette was subsequently arrested too. And by the way, he's never been heard from. He went under house arrest in Bremerton, Washington after that, and no one knows where he is at.
Interesting.
Well, what the plan was, and this is what my military sources have told me, is that this event in which Stevens was killed was 2 months before the election, Mitt Romney versus Obama. And it was already coming out that Stevens had run guns, run kids, and drugs to support regime change in Libya and now Syria, in which he was funding Al-Qaeda to do their dirty work for the CIA. And this was starting to come out, so the Obama administration needed to eliminate him. So this trail did not follow Obama into the election of 2012. The military was going to go in because, as we all know now, Obama has ripped his way through the military by firing over 260 senior command military officers. And so the military had plans to do a soft coup. And the soft coup included rescuing Stevens, and Stevens realizing he had been hung out to dry, would sing like a canary and would bring down the Obama administration. And the military obviously would have promised immunity for Stevens' revelations. Well, it didn't work out that way. As we know, Stevens was killed. The 2 commanding officers were sacked, and then Obama went on a tirade through the military. Now, there's a branch of the military that Obama does not control very well, and that's the Navy. And in particular, he doesn't control the submarine fleet. They have their own uniforms. They kind of march to their own drummer. The military code of justice, they've morphed into what they want to follow. And of course, if you take like an Ohio-class submarine, they can have up to anywhere between 16 to 24 nuclear weapons that can be launched against a target. So the Navy is a real substantial obstacle for Obama. And he's tried to rip his way through the submarine fleet, and he fired, I believe, 5 or 6 command officers. The problem is that work is so task-specific, and the Navy has to train their own, that if Obama fires all these submarine mariners, he can't find enough replacements to come in and keep this to be a viable force. So he doesn't have really good control over this. And I've been told that the submarine commanders will not give Obama their launch codes. They are independently maintaining them, and they routinely change them. So they're in near rebellion. Now, there is an Operation Red Flag, as it's been called, that's been in effect now for 6 years involving the Navy. Virtually every ship on a 24/7 basis, on a rotating basis, will be out to sea. They'll be out of their port. I noticed this last summer when I went into San Diego Harbor, and I like to go to the base and walk through the old ship relics and so forth. Well, they're there, but the ships that you ordinarily see are not there. And what they are is they're several miles off the coast, engaged in what is now going on a 6-year war game, which matches the amount of time that Obama's been in office. Now, you have to ask yourself, why would the Navy, and by the way, the map for this exercise and the references to it through congressional letters, so this isn't something that Dave Hodges is making up. That's all on today's article at thecommonsenseshow.com. I've got 2 congressional letters on this involving the Undersecretary of the Navy as well as NOAA, the National Oceanographic agency. It's all on my website to validate this drill, as well as the map that shows the placement of these ships. This covers almost every inch of.
I do believe there's also a petition I had found on there where some of the animal rights groups were actually petitioning the Navy to stop the sonar as concern for the whales and the damage that the sonar could do to the whales also, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And that's part of the war games. Now, have you ever heard of a 6-year war game? No one has.
No.
This has never happened in American history. 30 days is a long war game. This has been going on for 6 years. And why is that? Well, number one, I have learned that the Navy is afraid of being sabotaged through EMP attacks. And they also do not want to be overrun by foreign troops if their ships are tied up at port. So those are the two reasons the Navy does not trust Obama, and for good reason. And the Navy sets out to sea, and they are anywhere between 5 and 100 miles off the coast. And you're right, they are using sonar, and they're constantly training. Now, I raised the question in my article, why would the Navy feel compelled to do sonar training right off our coast? Well, it's quite obvious. When we go into martial law, it's really quite clear, and I've written a lot about this through the last few years. Obama will use foreign assets because he can't totally count on the fact that over the long term, that American soldiers over the long term will fire on American citizens. And so he needs to use foreign assets. And I've covered the fact that in 2011, FEMA, through the direction of President Obama, signed a bilateral agreement with the Russian Foreign Ministry. And in past articles, I have put this on my website, this link, this government link, that allowed the first 15,000 Russian soldiers to come into our country to do disaster training. And I raised the point in 2011, why in the world do we need Russians to come in and train for disaster? Is the National Guard going on vacation? Are EMTs going to go on strike? It made no sense. And that number has grown, and no one really knows how many Russians are in the country. But if we look at a drill that was run by FEMA and DHS from July to October of 2013, there were 386,000 troops, foreign troops that trained in the United States under the DHS auspices, and they had 3 operational goals. 1 was to do urban warfare training. 2, to learn to use American weapons. 3, to learn to use conversational English. And that's martial law training. 386,000 foreign troops in 2013, just about 2 years ago.
Well,
so it's clear to me that the Obama administration will use foreign troops. The Navy is not on board with this. And I'm not saying every aspect of the Navy, but I'm saying in particular the submarine fleet. Now, if you look at Jade Helm's map, you get a hint as to why is Southern California listed as a hostile area in the Jade Helm drill. Well, where are a good number of our Navy and Marine Corps bases at? They're in Southern California. Well, yeah, and this is why I believe that they've been labeled to be a hostile area. And we're looking at the sides are being drawn for the Civil War. And there is an Operation Red Flag now that's run out of Nellis. Now, that operation used to be really kind of vanilla, no big deal. A lot of air transport drills, aerial fighting drills. But now Nellis has taken on joint air control training with foreign assets. And I'm talking fighters from the UK, from Canada, from Denmark. It's an international force. Mm-hmm. And I believe these are the sides being drawn for the coming Civil War. And this is, in effect, what Jade Helm is practicing for.
Well, I would agree with you. And to anybody out there in the listening audience that might doubt that Russians aren't here. And like you said, this goes back a few years ago. I would say even into 2012, Dave, where even when I was living in Colorado, I used to live in Greeley, Colorado. We found them, me and a group of friends. We actually went out looking for these guys, and the reports that we were, getting from people around town that were all corroborating with one another not individually, but, we were taking different stories from different people and they were all matching up. Well, when we went to go find them, we had found out that they had left, and we went up to a little gun range in Pierce, Colorado along 85, and we found 3 Russian military men right there doing training. And as a gunsmith, of course, knowing what we had known, I looked at their weapons. All their weapons have armor stamps on them from the importer. So as soon as you get like an AK-47 and it imports into this country, the armors put a stamp on there, or whoever the importer is that brings that in, they have to put a stamp of the company name, city, and state. All their weapons were stamped, and thousands of people in Colorado would catch these guys at gun shows. It's obvious they're Russians. They told me they were mechanical engineers when we tried having a discussion with them. And then, right after that, we watched this kid basically as fast as he could squeeze the trigger, shoot out a bullseye at 25 yards, unloading a full Glock 19 mag into the target. And, well, I've never met a mechanical engineer that can shoot that good. That's usually very highly trained military, if not Russian Spetsnaz, that can shoot like that. And, of course, I had a special forces source at Fort Carson where when Reuters, I don't know if you remember, but Reuters, or one of the international news agencies, had reported that, they're coming to DIA to do a little training drill to drop in on Denver International Airport. And they said 20 Russian Spetsnaz were coming in. Well, the interesting thing enough, I called my buddy down at Fort Carson and he told me, no, there's 200 of them here. They're Russian Spetsnaz. They're deploying with us. And they actually deployed to Somalia with 6 months with these Russian troops. And they are all over at all the largest army commands. So, I mean, I'm sure other people have seen these Russians as well. And there hasn't been a place I've been to in America where the conversation doesn't come up about Russian soldiers.
Yeah, I may speak to that a little bit here because I know about the Fort Carson situation. I've got a lot of contacts in Colorado because it's where I grew up. And what's interesting about Fort Carson is there are anywhere between 200 to 500 Russians at any given time that are there. I've run pictures of them at my website where they have posed with American soldiers in training.
Yeah.
I have live training photos of Russians. I also have a video that Sherry Wilcox took 3.5 years ago of Russian soldiers in uniform inside of DHS vehicles traveling from Tennessee into western Kentucky on the interstate. And I run that on my website a couple of times. Dr. Susan Hellman, who lives in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, her and many other people from that community now that listen to my show, I'm on one of their FM stations there, they have informed me through the years that they have a large Russian community there of all Russian males, no family members, no women, no kids. They speak Nebraska English, but they hear them speaking Russian among themselves frequently. They'll park vans near the base of the Smoky Mountains right outside Gatlinburg, and they'll disappear in the Smoky Mountains for days at a time or weeks at a time. So they're clearly doing military training. I got reports and pictures from Ketchikan, Alaska, Fairbanks, Alaska. They're all through the country, the Central Valley in California. A guy named Keenan York, who used to be a sheriff, takes pictures of them for me and sends them across to me. The Russians are firmly embedded in this country. I don't know the number, but I would have to guess 200,000 to 300,000 just because of the scope of the reports and how many there are. So they are going to be among the Chinese and other foreign troops that are training here on our soil. They will be a martial law contingency force under the UN flag. And paralleling that right now in Texas, I've been sent in the last 48 hours pictures of UN vehicles in Texas being transported.
Wow.
So clearly there's a pre-positioning of assets going on in preparation for martial law.
Well, yeah, and they're slowly building up to it. I mean, I think I cannot remember. I've looked at so much since then, but I know a few years back, I believe it was maybe 2011, 2012, where a DOD survey was sent out to some Marines. I've seen similar things before I got out. Every year, you get the annual DOD survey in the mail. And the biggest one that I know that made the news is they surveyed a group of Marines and 25% of them said they would fire on an American citizen, because the question was asked, would you fire on an American citizen and obey those orders? And 25% of them said they would. And this is also the radical change we're starting to see in our military. I know a lot of people that are still in that are not happy with the direction and course our American military is moving right now. But yes,
we've got most of our combat forces in Afghanistan, 165,000 to be exact, and that's the bulk of our combat force. So that means if the poop hits the fan here in the United States, we have a real problem, because who in the military is going to be left to stand for the people?
Exactly.
Well, we have the Navy, but we don't have land-based forces to a large extent that will stand up for the American people. And that's a very, very scary thought. I don't think that most Americans over a long period of time that are in uniform will fire on American citizens. I know that well over half will not. But the problem is most of our combat forces, like I said, are gone. So we're at a real strategic disadvantage. We also are looking at a situation in the long term where Russia, who, by the way, let's go back to those connections I drew with ISIS and the drug cartels, Hamas, Hezbollah, Muslim Brotherhood, ISIS, all that stuff. Let's add one more variable into this. Russia routinely uses Hamas and Hezbollah to run guns into Syria to support Assad. And so we have a Russian connection with this group, and I believe Russia is involved in fermenting a lot of this dis-ease that we have south of the border. But it gets better than that for the Russians. Putin has managed to forge alliances with over a dozen nations in our hemisphere, from Brazil to Chile to Ecuador to Nicaragua, Panama, Cuba. We have a bunch of nations that have either Russian soldiers and or Russian equipment and or Russian airplanes and or Russian ships. There is a Red Dawn invasion force being put together in Latin America to sweep up through our southern border. What ISIS is, as well as the assassins for the Sinaloa cartel, the MS-13, we know the MS-13 came across our border last summer in great numbers. And then you've got the drug cartels, you've got ISIS. That's the fifth column insurgency force that will lead the way. They will disrupt the command and control. They'll take over small towns. They'll kill policemen, mayors, and so forth, the same as they do in Mexico. And then I believe we're going to see a Red Dawn invasion of the United States. I think that's down the road. Right now, we need to worry about this incursion fifth column force consisting of ISIS, the drug cartels, and MS-13. So we are really up against it here as an American people. I wrote an article a few weeks ago entitled "To Texans Prepare to Defend Yourselves," and I took tremendous heat for that in the mainstream media. And then what happened 10 days later? You had the Garland, Texas event involving 2 ISIS members.
Yep.
It's just beginning, and we're going to see it become a lot worse this summer.
Now, I'd like to play devil's advocate here for a second, because I really want all of us to be wrong. I truly do, because if we're right about this is, I mean, we're done. We're done now. But with what we just covered there, do you think maybe certain elements within the government might see this going on and with the buildup with Russia and everything like that, and they're pre-positioning our troops in certain states? Now, of course, why would they list, 3 states hostiles? That's the missing piece. But do you want to believe that maybe they're pre-positioning up in anticipation for this Red Dawn? I mean, I go back to the internment manuals. I go back to all the white papers, the memos, everything they have. And we have all the smoking guns to say this is what they're preparing for. But maybe dream with me a little.
Well, I think it's pretty clear. I don't know how soon the Red Dawn scenario will unfold, but all the pieces are there.
Yeah.
And I've written about this, and I'm going to reintroduce this again because it's now timely. But we're going to see the main threat in the near future are going to be these fifth column forces. That's going to be the thing that will occupy our attention up close and personal for the next several months. The Red Dawn scenario, I believe, is down the road, and I believe it'll come at a time when the fifth column insurgency forces will force us to be under martial law. So we're talking about two separate events, but long term, we have a lot to worry about just within our own hemisphere.
Yes.
And this is Putin's way of striking back at us. I mean, we're doing the same thing with Ukraine, and we're threatening Russia's mainland with NATO forces, and he's retaliated in kind. And he's forged these alliances that are a direct threat to our national security.
Now,
so I don't think that we can take this lightly. So even when I put on my most conservative hat, and I'm going to say, be really careful, Dave, before you open your mouth and say something that will come back to haunt you in the future, I have to tell you that the pattern there is really clear. There's no doubt that there's a Red Dawn force put together. There's no doubt we have fifth column insurgency forces inside the United States. The FBI director has acknowledged this. In fact, it's kind of funny. I think the FBI director will be replaced in the near future. Yeah. He actually thinks he's supposed to do his job. He didn't get the joke. I can't believe he spoke out about ISIS the way he did. I think Obama would prefer this to be under wraps. So, I understand your desire to play devil's advocate. I just don't really see it any other way than I'm presenting it, because the facts add up to the fact that this country is being taken down by force.
Well, and
this is what Jade Helm is leading up to. Now, Jade Helm may not go live, Kevin. That's a possibility, and I've been saying this all along. But the successor to Jade Helm will go live. They're not, the forces that be are not committing these kinds of assets, time, and money to this endeavor if they don't plan on using it at some point in the future.
Well, and you brought up a great point a second ago, saying that Putin, this is our, basically his way of retaliating at us. But one thing I wanted to throw in there is he maybe not even just working with certain levels there in the District of Criminals? Is he maybe working with them because we do have all these Russian military here?
Yeah. Ultimately, Obama and Putin work for the same people.
Oh, yeah.
If you really want to go big picture, and I'm saying significantly down the road, if you want that, you have to look at the Bank of International Settlement. They run the central banks, which run the governments of the modern world. And what the Bank of International Settlement wants, and if you read what the people that control that institution write, they want a war of unification and depopulation so they can put the world politically, socially, culturally, and militarily, economically under one house that they control. And this is ultimately their final goal. We have a long way to go before we get there.
We do have a long way to go indeed, but right now we are going to go to our top of the hour break here on Media Broadcasting Center. We ask that you hang tight, watch these cool little commercials we got coming up, and go nowhere. You're listening to Late Night on NBC. This is the Restore the Republic show. We're going to the phones next hour. We'll be right back.
On June 8, 1967, during the Six-Day War, the USS Liberty, a naval technical research ship in international waters, was attacked by Israeli air and naval forces, Israel fully knowing this was an ally ship. The combined attacks killed 34 and wounded 171 men. Following the event began the largest cover-up in history. We are the USS Liberty Veterans Association, and we are looking for a few good men. Please join us in our fight by demanding a congressional investigation of the attack. Find out more by visiting us at usslibertyveterans.org today. And remember, you can handle the truth.
Are you tired of the direction America is headed? Do you feel like your representatives are not representing you? Do you want to get things back to normal and just don't know where to start? Well, we know how you feel. We are the People's Awareness Coalition. Join the discussion online at pacalliance.us to find out the latest information that will bring solutions to our problems. While you are there, be sure to get your copy of the book, The Red Amendment by L.B. Bork. You have questions, we have answers. The People's Awareness Coalition.
We can now say, with moral certainty and considerable scientific authority, that the death of JFK was committed by a meticulously executed conspiracy which was obscured by an extensive cover-up. Murder in Dealey Plaza, edited by James Fetzer, goes to the heart of the JFK assassination. You'll read new and up-to-date information regarding the Secret Service, the Lincoln limousine, the medical evidence, the cover-up, altering the film, framing the patsy, and the silent historians. Also, 16 smoking guns, each one crushing the government's lone assassin scenario. A world-class chronology of November 22nd, 1963. Chapters by David W. Mantic, Gary Aguilar, Vincent Palomera, Douglas Weldon, Jack White, Ira David Wood III, James H. Fetzer, Doug Horn, and a classic essay by Bertrand Russell. The complete story in the pages of one single book, edited by James H. Fetzer. Read it now, read it again. You'll use it as a reference. Murder in Dealey Plaza. Available at Amazon.com and major bookstores around the world. It's murder.
Less than 3% of you people read books, because less than 15% of you read newspapers. Right now, there is an entire generation that never knew anything that didn't come out of this tube. This tube can make or break presidents, popes, prime ministers. Television is not the truth. Television is a circus, a carnival, a traveling troupe of acrobats, storytellers, dancers, singers, jugglers, sideshow freaks, lion tamers, and football players. We deal in illusions, man. None of it is true. But you people sit there day after day, night after night, all ages, colors, creeds.
Broadcasting live on network radio.
So turn off your television sets, turn them off now, turn them off and leave them off.
Even Bush admits that Saddam Hussein had nothing to do with 9/11. Our own FBI acknowledged it has no hard evidence that ties Osama bin Laden to 9/11. But if Saddam had nothing to do with 9/11, and if Osama had nothing to do with 9/11, then who did it? Who did it? The 9/11 conspiracy provides the answer. Discover the big picture. Learn what we know now. Find out what it means. 11 experts contribute to exposing the truth as the anatomy of an atrocity. Edited by James H. Fetzer. Buy it now if you have the courage to face the truth. Just don't think you're going to like it. The 9/11 conspiracy provides the answer.
All right, welcome back to the second hour of the Restore the Republic show here on Media Broadcasting Center. Oh, man, we have a lot to cover. We do indeed. But this hour, I wanted to go ahead and open up the phones in case anybody had any questions, comments, or maybe seen something. I know I was in touch with quite a few out there in Texas today on the many Jade Helm forums on Facebook. Thanks for bringing me in and accepting my my little membership there. So But anyways, get your pen and papers handy. I want you to write these numbers down at any point in time we provoke a thought, or you have a question, you agree, disagree, what have you. You can feel free to give us a call. 866-806-6264. I'll say it again, 866-806-6264. Enter code 148-048-9614 when prompted, and you might have to enter that code 2 times. So just if you hear it once, enter it, then you hear it again, enter it. And, well, our producer up there at the mothership, Mark Russell, he will pick you up and get you in on the show with us. So everybody's welcome. Anyways, returning back to our guest, Dave Hodges with the Common Sense Show. Your show runs on Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Is that correct, Eastern?
9 p.m. Central, but we're going through a time change on the 31st of this month. We're going to go 2 hours earlier. What we were finding and what our East Coast listeners were saying is, Dave, we really want to listen to your show live, but we got to go to bed. And our show is ending at 1 a.m. Eastern. So we are changing on the 31st, and we'll have a start time of 7 p.m. Central as opposed to 9 p.m. So we have 2 more weeks at 9 p.m. People can just follow the progress of this. You don't have to write this down. We'll have plenty of announcements on the website at thecommonsenseshow.com.
All right, fair enough. That's thecommonsenseshow.com. And while they're there, I know on my mobile device, I do get a little pop-up that asks you to subscribe. That way you can stay in tune with all these important updates as well. Is that correct?
Yes. I have a newsletter that people can go and sign up. It's at the top of my webpage. And, gosh, I'm really stunned at how fast this has grown. We're up to about 3,000 people, and we just started the newsletter on the 27th of April.
Wow. That's amazing.
So, yeah, we're really, it's stunning. Well, I think Jade Helm is driving a lot of it, and people are legitimately fearful of what's going on, and they should be fearful. In fact, let me talk about something else that's not come up. One of my main sources, military sources, ex-military, he had a lot of stars on his uniform, and he doesn't live too terribly far from me. And he cut his teeth on special forces when he was young. And he has friends in special forces that are working in Jade Helm. Some of them are in leadership positions. Most of them are. And to a person, they have told him they don't know where Jade Helm is going. Jade Helm is so compartmentalized right now by forces deep within the Pentagon that the Jade Helm people could not tell us publicly what exactly the purpose of Jade Helm is. Do this mission on Monday, do this on Tuesday, and they have no idea what the overall picture is. Now, this really greatly concerns me because what this signals to me is that I think the true nature of Jade Helm and the entire scope and depth of the operation is being kept from the American soldiers, especially special ops, because I think if they were told, you know, those drills you're practicing when you drop into American communities and you're going to extract actors in the middle of the night and take them off in helicopters to FEMA camps, that's going to be real someday. And we're not going to be doing it to people in the Middle East. You're going to be doing it to people in the United States. And then we're going to enforce martial law. And then, by the way, too, there's also pretty good evidence that some of what they're training for are death squads. The Houston Chronicles talked about silent infiltration techniques to blend in among the people. And they have a see something, say something program that's going to go in a lot of these Texas communities where they're supposed to report unusual activity as a barometer of how well they're operating in stealth. Well, that's what death squads do.
Yeah.
And that's what special ops do too. And special ops, when a war is going to start, they drop in, they take out command and control. They also extract political targets, or they assassinate them. And this is what they're practicing for on American soil. And I think if these people really knew, you're going to be doing this to your brothers and sisters in America, I think you'd have widespread mutiny in the ranks. And this is why Jade Helm is so compartmentalized. And even the leadership doesn't understand the full scope of the operation.
Well, and I'm glad you bring that up because I wanted to read something. And what we're saying here, because I'm a military veteran, and your father, I believe, he was very high up in the Navy, correct?
He was a captain in naval intelligence.
Okay, so we're all coming from the same sides here. We're not against the military. me, myself, I'm very pro individual. I support the individual. I don't necessarily support the policy sometimes, but I do support our military. And I think there's a lot of great men and women in our military. And I've had people attack me saying, oh, you're just one of these nut jobs and you're just trying to attack good men and women. No, we're not. This is where the compartmentalization and secrecy aspect comes in. And on here on your article, the secret goals of Jade Helm are leaking out about halfway down the page. If folks want to go over to thecommonsenseshow.com and look this up, the need for Jade Helm secrecy. And this is just Dave Hodges imagining here. But can you imagine if Jade Helm forces were being told in briefings that, one, the Trans-Pacific Partnership will bring down the U.S. government and cause collapse of the dollar. 2, you are the martial law force. As such, you will be facing an angry and hungry public armed with guns. 3, special operations forces will extract and eliminate as many opposition leaders as possible. That gets into the red list, blue list, by the way. 4, conventional units such as the 82nd Airborne operating under the auspices of DHS will impose martial law once extractions are complete. 5, riot control measures will be in effect, including assassinations of perceived public protest leaders. Snipers will be employed for this purpose. 6, the troops will be told that most of the protesters are domestic terrorists, and this is the key. This is the key point right here, that most domestic terrorists, in the attempt to depersonalize them in the eyes of the troops, thus making it likely that lethal force will be ordered and complied with. And most importantly, number 7, Jade Helm will assist in the transition between the former United States and Trans-Pacific Partnership. This is what some who are running Jade Helm believe is the ultimate goal of Jade Helm. But see, Dave, we're not going to hear this. Any whether you're high level, low level, special ops, ground pounder, or just, you're changing crappers on an aircraft. They're not going to get this in a briefing, are they? And this is all the documentation that we have is what's going on.
Well, I've been able to put this together because of time proximity. Now, by the way, since I wrote that article, the Trans-Pacific Partnership was dealt a death blow today in Congress by the left wing of the Democratic Party, as amazing as that sounds. But if we think Obama's done with the TPP, think again. I mean, he had setbacks in Obamacare, and he just kept at it until he got what he wanted.
Yeah.
And don't forget, he's notorious for implementing things through executive order. So if worse comes to worse, he'll just bypass the treaty process and declare the fact that we're in the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And this is a really nefarious situation because the TPP has the ability to wipe out all governmental authority. In fact, it reminds me of a movie that came out in 1975 starring James Caan called Rollerball, in which there were no nations on the planet and there were 6 corporations that ran the world, and it was extremely autocratic. And this is where the TPP will take us. It'll be the elimination of nation-state authority. So there will be no constitution. There will be no civil liberties. Your rights are what the corporations will say it is. The TPP sets up a 22-person council, and if a government is deemed to have interfered in corporate profits, they go before this council. Can you believe that? Putting the government on trial by corporations, yet that's what the TPP will do. The TPP is by no means dead. And the media today is selling it as if it's dead. It's not. It's not dead.
No.
And when the people realize that they've awakened to being under corporate control, there's no constitution, there's no red, white, and blue, I believe they could take to the streets. And that's part of what Jade Helm is about as well. Jade Helm is about riot control, suppressing civil unrest. And this is in part what they're practicing for. By the way, those first 6 principles that I put into that list in the article that you just read from, I took every one of those concepts directly from government documents.
I had a very gut-wrenching feeling that you did when I read that earlier today. Because all this stuff is in their training manuals. It's in their white papers. They've come out in the media and said this stuff. It's just that we're being inundated. I mean, we're just being overrun with so much stuff going on at once. I mean, it's hard to all keep up with. And for most of the American people, they're in information overload right now, it seems like. I mean, especially those that watch the mainstream media, they don't know how to think left from right anymore. You know, and it's just really, well, call it for what it is. It's a psychological operation.
Oh, you're exactly right. And I communicate with Steve Quayle quite a bit. And Doug Hagman and I are friends, as well as Joe Hagman. I don't know how they feel, but I'll speak to myself. I feel I've got a pretty good grip on the challenges that we as middle-class Americans face. I think I don't claim to know everything, but I have a pretty good handle on what we're up against. And I have to tell you that I'm on information overload.
Yeah.
I'm stunned and shocked at what I find in Jade Helm. Let me give you another shocking conclusion with Jade Helm. Excuse me. It was, early April. I started receiving communications from northern Michigan from people in the Army Reserves there or relatives of Army Reservists and National Guard in Michigan. And they talked about how they were going to Camp Grayling soon, and they were going to be trained as security personnel for Guantanamo, and then they would complete their training in Guantanamo. Now, first of all, Camp Grayling, it's an interesting choice because Camp Grayling, when you read anyone's FEMA map, Camp Grayling is among the most notorious FEMA campsites that there is. And I'm thinking, okay, so they're going to be training in a known FEMA camp. But here's what's curious. Obama did announce at one time he wanted to close Guantanamo. He's making good on that promise, at least in terms of closing it to terrorists. According to a DNI report that I've published on my website, Obama has released 116 terrorists since January 1. Some of those have been transferred to mainland facility prisons. Some of them have just been released.
Mm-hmm.
He's cleaning out the terrorists out of Guantanamo. Yet at the same time, they're training significant number of security personnel to go to Guantanamo. Now, that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me until you consider the fact of what Jade Helm's purpose is. At least their number one protocol is to use special operations forces to extract political dissidents. You have to have a place when you extract them to put them. And I believe that Guantanamo will serve home to many of the Americans who are extracted when this drill goes live.
And some of those Americans could quite be, as Steve Quayle would eloquently put it, with his whole synopsis and exposing of the red list, blue lists that have been around for probably about 20, at least maybe 80s, I think.
Oh yeah. I had Steve on my show, 2 months ago, a little over, maybe 10 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we got extensively into the red list, blue list discussion. And he's right on the money. There is no question. I know he was on with David Knight on InfoWars, and I've seen that recording as well, too. And Steve just nailed it. He said they're going to kill people for real when they do this, when it's no longer a drill. And I do agree with that. And this goes back to what I've been told about NSA data gathering. We have an NSA device that's run by supercomputer, and it measures, it's a threat matrix, and you get 16 individual scores on this matrix. So known domestic terrorist associations. So Kevin, if you and I happen to be in the same restaurant together, and we're sitting 6 feet apart, our cell phone signals would make our scores on that domain go up because we're both considered to be domestic terrorists by the powers that be.
Yes.
Exactly. So they have 16 domains that they measure your threat to the existing New World Order, and then you get an aggregate total score on this. Now, every American's been signed a threat matrix score from what I've been told, but what no one knows is what is the threshold to do what. At what list, at what number, for example, in the threat matrix score will you be declared to be on the red list or the blue list? No one knows that in the military circles that I run in, but you know that they know. And What they're really concerned about is not, this is what I've been told by my military sources. I'm going to try to explain this as simply as I can. These scores are not really based on the fact that, let's say, Alex Jones has 3 million people visiting his site any given week, just for the sake of argument. What they're concerned about the most is the potential for people to motivate those to stand up to tyranny. So I do think Alex Jones would receive a very high score because he does have the ability to motivate people to action, as does Steve Coyle, as does Doug Hagman. But what they're really looking at is not so much what your listenership is or your readership. They're looking at your ability to move people, your potential to be a dissident leader. And this is in part what they measure. So this is why they listen to every cell phone conversation through the NSA. They read every email that you have. Every form of communication is passively and actively tracked, goes into a supercomputer, and the data is synthesized by pre-written software. And part of what they measure you on is your potential to arouse people to action. That's what they're really worried about. And I know exactly where they're coming from on this. My background academically in terms of what I've taught is in undergraduate sociology and graduate and undergraduate psychology courses. And as such, I've become a student of what motivates people to action. How many people do you have to get in a movement on a percentage basis until you have a movement that just catches fire? And we have an answer to that question. There's a group out there, and the acronym is SNARK. And off the top of my head, I don't remember what the acronym stands for without looking at my notes. But SNARK has done some very good social research. And what they have found is it takes about 10% of the population to be fully committed to an ideal before a trend becomes a fad and takes off like crazy. So what we should be shooting for in the independent media is to reach the 10% figure where people are really on board with what they're hearing us talk about, and we are motivating them to collective action, whatever that would be, hopefully nonviolent action. And we're approaching that 10%. I see signs of that every day. This is why we have the FCC passed the net neutrality action, which was totally unconstitutional. They don't have the power of Congress, but they did it anyway. They're going to crack down on internet freedom. This is why we have Jade Helm, because they want to remove dissident people that can motivate. This is why the NSA has threat matrix scores for people's potential to arouse other people to action. If I know about this 10% figure, they know about this 10% figure. And this is why when I look at the actions that they're performing against the American people, everything they're doing makes sense to me, because they're trying to suppress the number of people that you and I and others like us can infect with ideas of freedom.
Exactly. And with that, though, all these things we talk about, it's rare that you hear a solution to it. And the biggest thing I've been on, and maybe I'd like to take your opinion on this, is forming local communities. I'm not even going to the effect of a militia, but start working in your local areas, because all over Facebook every day I'm seeing stuff. People are frustrated. They're done with the ballot box and they're ready to go to the bullet box. And it's like, we don't have to let it come to that here. I don't want to see that here. I've been in a war. Granted, I haven't seen near as much as what some have, but that's not what we want in our constitutional republic. And right now, before martial law is declared, before any of this stuff is declared, we have the opportunity to form up locally, take charge, re-educate our governments locally, inform these communities to where we can start nullifying this stuff. We can start avoiding this stuff. We can make community response teams to watch out for our neighbors. And it's just, it's going to take hard work. It's a lot of hard work. And from what I've noticed, I don't know about you, but hard work is, people want to go to the most convenient, emotional thing that is going to be feel good, that might not have the results in the end run that they would with putting in the hard work and getting the results over time. You kind of understand what I'm saying there?
Well, I do, and I'll tell you, you're right. America's a soft nation now. We've become a nation of patsies, with some strong people living in it. But what will motivate the patsies to become strong people is when they realize their very existence is under risk.
Yeah.
And their lives are at risk, and the lives of their families are at risk. People will respond to base level threats. And that's what it's going to take to get the majority of people moving in this country. But listen, I know what the stakes are. I'm a student of history. I have an undergraduate degree in history. I know we're paralleling the worst of Joseph Stalin, Adolf Hitler, Mao Zedong. We are looking at having mass democide in our country. And democide is a term that means death by government. In the 20th century, death by government totaled 262 million people, and that was about 5 times more than how many people were killed in wars. So we're looking at going down that road in this country. The term blue list probably should be defined at this point. And I'm hoping, I know the NSA is listening to this, but I'm hoping that people who've taken an oath to defend the Constitution, who are in public office or in the military or they're a policeman, my hat's off to all these brave people. But these people need to understand something. In history, whenever you've had the minions of a tyrant support the tyrannical takeover of a society, when Hitler purged Germany so the Nazis could step in, and he went after the Social Democrats, he went after the communists, he used brown shirts to do that. Well, what became of the brown shirts? They were all killed. In the Bolshevik Revolution, when the Bolsheviks asked the ex-military people to turn in their guns in places like Moscow and Leningrad, and to stay out of the fight, and they would be left alone, they and their families were all executed.
Yep.
And so when we look at the people that foment a tyrannical takeover of a country, they meet a very untimely end because dead men tell no tales, and the people in power want to rewrite the history. They don't want to tell that, hey, we had to kill millions of people to get control. They don't want that in the history books. They don't want that in their legacies. And the people need to understand who are working for the NSA, and maybe what we're talking about tonight has ended up on the desk of a human analyst because a computer has flagged us. What they need to hear is the fact that your life expectancy is really low. It's not much greater than the people whose demise that you're causing to have happen. And I think if people really understood that, who've sworn an oath to defend our country, and they realize that they can switch sides and they can defend the people, they can become an oath keeper like Stuart Rhodes is, we have a chance here to turn a lot of these people if they just know their history.
I would agree with you, and I think the best way to sum that up is an old quote, at least an unknown one, but when freedom fails, good men rot in filthy jails, and those who cry to appease are hung by those they tried to please. And I mean, this is really what we're looking at. But before we go any further, I think our producer, Mark, he wanted to cut in and say something there, Dave.
Hi there, Dave. It's Mark producing your show tonight. And just to start off with, I'd like to really welcome your first appearance, I hope, of many on the network. Chance and myself and some of the other NBC people have been great followers of yourself, Hagman and Steve Quayle, and we're quite excited with having your presence and Steve on Thursday. So we'd first like to really thank you for all the work that you're all doing. We know what sacrifice it is in your personal lives and so forth. And I would just, as one, like to really extend my personal thanks and my respect out to you.
Well, I appreciate that. And there is a cost, and certainly I don't want to be melodramatic by any means, but I've been denied employment twice because of my work, and I have also been under threat because of my work. It's caused some upset to my family. So there is a cost to doing this, and then of course you get to the ultimate price. You've got Breitbart and Clancy and Michael Hastings have all met untimely ends because they dared to tell the truth. And so we're looking at a time when it's not safe to be a truth teller. But the thing is, there's safety in numbers. So if we can get people to join us, we are collectively much safer. In fact, I want to say this about Jade Helm, Mark, is that my hope here, by relentlessly covering this issue from many different angles, is that if we can get people to stand up like we did in Bastrop County and other counties in Texas, we can push this out. You know, people in Colorado raised hell with their governor, and as a result, what they did was they kicked it out of Colorado. We have a chance to stop this. We just have to have the people speak up as one.
Absolutely, and we as a network, we've covered an awful lot of rabbit holes for many years. And one of our statements has always been, and one of my personal philosophies in regards to this 10%, I believe there is strong factions within inside of the system that, unfortunately, they're as asleep as the general public are. They're so departmentalized and isolated that if we can reach 10%, you're going to see a lot of them turning the tides of things and wanting to do the right things. I don't believe everybody in government is evil, although right now it seems like the evil is winning out. We do believe that there is a chance if the 10% rise, it's going to influence the other people in positions to stand up and turn to being oath keepers and start realizing they have people that will follow them and make a difference.
Well, I agree with you about not everyone in government's evil. In fact, most aren't. But people are going to be asked to do questionable things in the coming days ahead. They worry about their jobs, how they're going to pay their mortgage. They worry about maintaining their retirements. And that can force people to do things that aren't good. So the old saying kind of comes into play, all evil needs to triumph is for good men to do nothing. And this is when I look at people who will send me pictures of military vehicles at closed Walmarts, for example, but, oh, Dave, don't use my name. People are afraid of their shadow in this country. People should be proud to put their name on something that exposes wrongdoing, to say we won't tolerate this in America. Instead, we're cowering to our government, and we're afraid to stand up with courage. And I'm speaking specifically to people who work in government positions who need to become whistleblowers, like Scott Bennett, former special operations officer, who comes out and says that the federal government, and he has the proof for it, is funding ISIS through Swiss banking accounts, and he names names on who's handling the money. And he's been on my show and said so. We don't have enough Scott Bennett.
We just had him on.
And so the people in government who may not be bad people, and they don't want to do harm to their neighbors, they don't want to extract them in the middle of the night, but they don't have the courage to speak up and say when something is wrong. They're complicit with their silence.
Absolutely. Scott was just on with Bev Collins last month as well. And we were able to produce a show and get it out on YouTube. And it's a great response. One of the things I wanted to ask you a little bit earlier was, do you think that there is any chance at all? There's been a few underground reports of action now starting to formulate to actually impeach Obama, because some of the insiders are actually seeing Jade Helm take this into effect and seeing that he basically is going to activate this martial law so that he never does leave office.
That's a really good point. You know, I've heard stories about presidents creating crisis. They won't leave office for a long time. I can go back to George H.W. Bush, and those rumors persisted. They followed Bill Clinton to the final days of his presidency, George W. Bush, and now Obama. In each case, up to the present time, I've rejected that thinking. I never thought a president could get away with this. But Obama has positioned himself with a series of executive orders, as well as Jade Helm enforcement, to where if he so chose, he would not have to leave office. So let me speak specifically to an executive order. In fact, I would encourage people, if they're not familiar with this, to go to my website at thecommonsenseshow.com, and I have a search engine bar. put in Executive Order 13603. That's Executive Order 13603. And what that calls for is a number of things, but Obama effectively becomes the Lord and Czar of everything. All food production, all transportation, all commerce, all manufacturing. And it even gets down to something that's really scary. Section 601 in Executive Order 13603 provides for two kinds of conscriptions of Americans. One is the traditional military conscription, and the other is a labor conscription under the Secretary of Labor. And what they call for there is the use of consultants, in quotes. And they go on and say consultants will have skills that are needed for the existing order and so forth, and they can be assigned to go anywhere, and they will not be paid for their duties. I want to say that again. They will not be paid for their duties. What we're talking about is forcing people to leave their homes and to perform slave labor. This is what Hitler did with the Jews in many of the Nazi war machinery camps where they were manufacturing war material. They'd bring Jews in, and they would wear these wooden shoes. That was a trademark. That'll become important in a second. And then they would systematically starve these Jews to death over a period of time by reducing their caloric intake. And that's part of our history. Well, on the face of Jade Helm, you have a thinly outlined wooden shoe. And I have taken that to mean that we are going to imprison Americans, force them to work in slave labor camps similar to the Jews. We've got the symbology of the wooden shoe, and we have Executive Order 13603, Section 601. It's also covered in Section 501 as well. This is scary, scary stuff. And let's not forget that in 2012, at Obama's urging, he got passed the National Defense Authorization Act, which was the elimination of the American Constitution. Due process, search and seizure, right to a speedy trial, avoiding unusual punishment, cruel and unusual punishment. Those provisions are all gone under the Constitution now because by Obama's direction, his people can extract you off the street, hold you indefinitely, for which you never receive a trial. No one will know where you're at or whether you're dead or whether you're alive. This is the power that Obama has granted himself. And so when you ask me whether or not he'll leave office, and you've got Jade Helm preparing to run wild across the country, I would say that this president has the greatest chance of any president I've ever seen in my lifetime of staying in office for as long as he wants.
Oh, wow. And actually, you can't see this right now, Dave, but I actually got a screen share going on for all the viewers out there, and we actually have this executive order with Section 601 pulled up that they can read. This is, people want to deny this or call us crazy or what have you or attack us, but this stuff is real. This right here, and I'm not playing around. This is straight from the whitehouse.gov. This is not a fictitious website at all. This is in America.
My favorite strategy that people like Steve and Doug Hagman and Joe Hagman and I, Alex Jones, Paul Watson, what we like to employ is we like to use the words of our opponents against them. We use their own documents, and they speak clearly as to intent. So this is not made up stuff. And people need to understand something about Dave Hodges a little bit. I retired from something probably 5 to 10 years too early, and that was college basketball coaching. I loved it, and I was good at it. I stopped doing that so I could devote more time to doing this. I'm not chasing windmills here. This stuff is real. It's a threat to my son's future. It's a threat to all our children. And if we don't collectively stand up and spread the word and reach a critical mass of people who are awake, we are going to go through days darker than what happened in Nazi Germany.
Yep. Absolutely. And I'd like to say, too, that this isn't the time of 30 years ago again. We're not standing on soapboxes in the center of a town square just saying an opinion and being able to have a kind of a psychotic chain wrapped around us. We're coming to people with the evidence. It's their own documents. It's their paperwork. It's their things that anybody can take a little bit of time, do your own research, do your own discernment, and people like David and everybody else out there have, all they've done is created some pathways, some doorways for you to go and do and discern the information yourself, start turning off the TV and start acting and standing up.
Well said, Mark. I mean, in this is the crossroads we're at for the people out there. I mean, I know you got to live life. I know you got to do all this stuff, but you do need to devote some time, whether you're ex-military, whether you're in the military, whether you're just a civilian. I know work gets busy. I know life happens, but the things that are about to follow the little cushy life you have now are going to be like things you've never seen before, and you could have never imagined they'd happen here, and they're happening. We have all the documents to prove this stuff.
You know, let me ask a question to us all that I get asked frequently by average people who are just waking up. I had someone, I mentioned NPR attacked me in a real hit piece that was very poorly written. And I said that they had brought 30,000 people to my website in 2 days, according to my analytics. Well, one of these people I've actually now had a phone conversation with, and he's an accountant out of Maryland. And he told me, he said, Dave, I thought people like you were absolutely nuts. And he said, I started reading your stuff on Jade Helm, and I would click on your hypertext links. And he said, you were telling the truth time after time after time. He said, I haven't had time to really absorb all this yet and make sense out of it, but I think we're in a great deal of danger. And he said, but I don't know what to do and where to start. Can you point me the way? He says, I can't do a radio talk show. I don't know how to write articles like this. He goes, I crunch numbers. And I told him, I said, you can write a letter to your congressman. I said, you can simply tell him that you know what the bad guys are up to and how your congressman's silence is allowing this to continue, and that if he wants to keep his job, he needs to stand up and do something. I said, something as simple as that means you've joined the war. You've taken a side and an action. People don't have to do dramatic things. You don't have to move millions of people like an Alex Jones or a Steve Quayle does.
No.
You simply have to have influence in your immediate environment and be prepared for a pushback. Your own family members will tell you you're nuts. I've heard it from my own family, although they're starting to come around now because they're starting to see the proof of what I've been talking about for the last 8 years. But I really think that everyone who's listening to me tonight can choose the smallest of small things to do, and these acorn will grow into a tree. It'll grow into a forest, and we'll reach that 10% number. And I think people fundamentally who are listening to this show tonight understand that things are horribly wrong in this country. They may not be able to comprehend the full depth and scope of what we've talked about on the show because they don't have the experience or been exposed to it. But they know that what we're saying is sincere, and they also know what we're saying is probably true because they're not liking what they're seeing coming out of Washington, D.C. And if I'm describing anyone in the listening audience like that, join the fight. You know, fight the fight on your level with what you're comfortable doing. And by doing that, we put together a diverse army that can stand up to the tyranny. See, the key to stopping this right now is Congress. Congress could stand up and they could deliver articles of impeachment to Obama next week, and Obama could be out of office by the end of next month. It could be a slam dunk. Now, that wouldn't solve all our problems because our government's been hijacked by the bankers, by the corporations, but it's a start. It's a move in the right direction. And if we did that, I can tell you right now, after Benghazi, I was told by my military sources that there would have been a military coup in this country 2, 3, 4 years ago, but they didn't believe they had the popular support of the people. And if there's anything that Vietnam taught us is that if any insurgency action is going to succeed, you have to win the hearts and minds of the people. If the American people, through their Congress, would stand up to this tyranny, I believe the military would act on our best interest. And that's the hope that I hold on to each and every day, that I can somehow reach enough people who are good men and women in the military will say, I'm not going along with this. This is treason. This is mutiny. that this is betraying our republic, and we're going to stand up and say no.
And that's what I was referring to in my last comment, that if people would stand up and use their voices, even just in their own community, the mid-level leaders and these people in every department, whether it's finance and so forth, would start really considering turning. They wouldn't be worried about paying their mortgage and everything else because they know they got the people behind them, and that they would start taking action and feel not so alone. One of the biggest weapons, I think, I believe that the system has really created since the 50s is they've isolated us all. They've torn apart the family unit. They've isolated friendships. They've isolated workplace. They've isolated us and instilled everybody with an overwhelming sense of fear. And we got to come back up and have other people hear our voices, and we will be joined.
I would agree with you there too, and Mark, that starts locally. You know, I mean, I know there's this wish for groups, and I see it a lot on social media to, you know, let's get the communication lines going for when this happens or that happens. That's great. But if you don't have those communication lines going in your own backyard, I mean, what are you going to do? Fight off your hungry neighbors, the people that you could be using to stop the real threat, the real problem? No, we don't want to fight those people. I just heard a gun clack. Did you guys hear that?
I heard that too. Hopefully it's not on my end here.
Hold on. I'll be right back.
I will tell you this. I was interviewing Jim Mars back in 2009, and this is when I was going after McCain hot and heavy for trying to steal my community's property without paying us for it. And I was broadcasting from our home. I live in the country, but we also have a home in the city. And I was broadcasting from my studio in the city, and 8 shots fired over where we were broadcasting from. While I was concluding my interview with Jim Mars. In fact, my news director, Andy DeRiso, had to finish the show. So I've been down that road before, not interested in repeating that.
Absolutely. And actually, Jim's coming up to Toronto again for the second time, doing a speaking engagement in one of the Elf Culture book clubs in downtown Toronto. It does an amazing job on spreading awareness and so forth. And Jim's doing another presentation there in March. We're looking forward to speaking with him again.
Yeah, I've had Jim on my show more times than I've had any other guest. I think in the 8 years I've had the Common Sense Show, I think Jim's been on 14 times. So, yeah, he's a great guest. He's a tremendous author. See, that's one of the gratifying things about being in this fight is the camaraderie. Before I got into this very deeply, and people finally kind of knew who Dave Hodges was, I had admired people like Jim. I'd read all his books. I admired Steve Quayle. I knew who Doug Hagman and Alex Jones were. And it's kind of interesting now because with most of these guys now, I'm friends with them, good friends with them. And it's a gratifying thing to be affiliated with such men and women of character who are leading the fight against these globalists. And I can tell the listening audience that I'm gratified that so much of the leadership in the independent media are really good character people. They're fun guys to be around, and they have great character, and they truly believe what they're doing. And we don't have the infighting. We have some of it in the independent media, but at the top levels of the independent media, you don't see all the infighting that you see in corporate America's media. Mm-hmm. That's because we know we're really, our lives are at stake here. We don't assassinate each other's character. We're not involved in power plays over money. So the listening audience is kind of on the fence saying, how do I know I can trust these guys? Well, for me, the one thing that really gratifies me is I'm part of a movement with people who really are excellent people, good human beings, and I think people who the public should trust.
That's well said. And that's a great point because, you know, we're such a small, tight-knit community. I mean, compared to the U.S. population or the world population for that matter, that we are in each other's courts. You know, what we're doing is dangerous. A lot of us don't get paid, or I mean, even if there is some money coming in, it's nothing to even glorify or write home about. It's in essence, truth is kind of its own lonely warrior. And, you know, now with the communications and the technology advancements, I think that we're not becoming such lonely warriors anymore. We're able to network. We're able to work with each other. And that's a good thing that I've seen all the way across the board too, you know?
Yeah, that's true. The cooperation that we have, for example, Doug, Joe, Steve, and I, we cross-cooperate on so many different things that we do. And it's kind of funny because people that come to this movement think that we're actually competitors. And I've been spoken to like they're competitors. I've had to tell people, I'm not in competition with Steve Quayle. Steve Quayle's a friend of mine. We're on the same side.
Yeah, exactly.
My fate, my ultimate fate of my family is tied to Steve's fate with his family. You know, our fortunes are going to rise and fall by the success. We've cast our sword. You know, I've drawn my line in the sand, and I've just said I'm not going to live under this tyranny. Because, you know, ultimately what it comes down to, and I was raised to be a Christian, and ultimately what this comes down to is, are you going to be on the side that's good and serves the founding religious principles of this country, namely Christianity, or are you going to be on the evil side that serves satanic principles of subjugation, murder, plunder, and so forth?
Yeah.
And ultimately, I see this as a war of good and evil. So people also say, what else can I do, Dave? I'm not really an organizer, an action person. Well, you can pray. You can take this into your church. You can talk to fellow Christians. And there is power in mass prayer. We actually have scientific research that talks about the power of collective prayer. It does work. It brings about effects in people's health, and it can change our physical circumstances. So there are people out there who say that, I don't know what to do. I don't like what's going on. Well, pray. Okay, that's one thing we can all do, and it's free.
Amen to that.
Amen to that for sure. But I think we got to kind of run to the close of the program here. Dave, I definitely would love to have you back on. I mean, over here at NBC, pretty much all of us, we got a real tight-knit community, as you were kind of speaking of, with all the hosts here on this network, from Mike, Soror, Bev Collins, Claudio Marty, pretty much all our hosts on here. And we're more or less willing to work with any of your people. And you're welcome, at least on my show. I can't speak for any of the other hosts, but you're welcome on my show anytime.
Likewise.
I definitely would love to have you and Paul Martin on in the same show, because that would be an action-packed show. So,
well, Paul Martin's a very good friend of mine.
He is
another one of those great Americans who I'm proud to know. The man has more integrity in his little finger than most people will have in their lifetime. But yeah, I'm happy to work with anyone in your organization, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be on and reach out to a new audience. And I would encourage people, if you've liked anything that I've said tonight, you can follow me on my website at thecommonsenseshow.com, and you can sign up for our newsletter, and everything that we do on the website will be delivered to your mailbox. And it's free of charge, and we don't sell your email address. Promise.
Awesome. Thank you. That's amazing, Steve. Again, that's commonsenseshow.com. Get over there, sign up, and get to know his news. And also his friend Paul Martin, revolutionradio.org. And that is your weapon of mass destruction.
Revolutionradio.org, one of the best websites out there.
Yes, and let me tell you, Paul, the conversations that I have with him, it's amazing, because I mean, literally, I can call him on the phone and I get my news updates right then and there. He has so much going through his head and so much on his plate. Paul is one of probably the most awesome people I think I've ever met in my life, and he's really, really hard worker, really does good at what he does. So check that out too, revolutionradio.org. There's a lot of great articles up over there too as well. So,
well, say hello to Steve Quayle for me when you have him on Thursday. And congratulations on landing such a great guest. Steve is really in demand.
Well, thank you very much. That's what I've heard. He's been a very busy man lately, and we're definitely welcoming him on to where he's not interrupted. He has a platform to do as long as he wants to do. We've actually opened that day up on the network. So if he wants to run 5 hours, it's free to him. When the show's over, he says when it's over. So.
Well, he gets filled with a spirit. I can tell you that man has amazing endurance.
Yes, he does.
And he's got a million things going on in his head at one time. So it'll be quite the show. And I'm going to try to tune in. What time frame are you having him on?
He'll be on from 6 to whenever Eastern time. So I'll definitely shoot you a link in email, and that way you'll have it.
Yeah, that's a show I want to catch. Well, guys, again, thank you so much for having me on, and to everyone in the listening audience, join hands with us and let's fight this fight together.
Amen to that, my brother. Amen to that. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show tonight. Everybody else out to the listening audience, tune in Thursday, 6 p.m. Of course, like we said, we got special guest Steve Quayle coming on. It's going to be an action-packed show, so don't miss it. Set a date on your calendar or whatever. I'll be sending out event emails via Facebook for you as well. But we would like to remind you at this point in time, we are a listener-supported media operation. So if you've gained anything from this show, please tune in and definitely get over there to Media Broadcasting Center and subscribe. It's $5 a month, $50 a year, whatever you want to do. That little fee definitely goes a long way, helps keep the, as my friend Randy Yarborough would say, help keep the lights on, the squirrel running out there in the cage and the transmitter. So this you get to watch this broadcast. So definitely sign in, help us out. Anyways, South Georgia, North Florida, and North America, I will catch you back here in 48 hours. Well, maybe a little less. I'm not sure. But I will catch you back either way here on the Restore the Republic show. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you. God bless. Good night. And remember, the only solution to all this is through the Lord Jesus Christ.